Welcome to the 5-Minute Biographies podcast, where every week we tell you interesting things about interesting people in about 5 minutes. And now here is your host, Wayne Armstrong.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new season of the 5-Minute Biographies podcast, where over the next 10 weeks we'll bring you some interesting facts about interesting people in about 5 minutes. So let's get started with Season 5, Episode 1, Steve McQueen. The King of Cool, as he became known, was born Terence Steven McQueen on the 24th of March 1930 in a suburb of Indianapolis called Beech Grove. He grew up on his Uncle Claude's farm during the Great Depression and lived there with his grandparents. They had been left to look after Steve because his alcoholic mother, Julia Ann, couldn't cope alone following the departure of her new young son's stunt pilot father, William Terence McQueen, only 6 months after they had met. McQueen's interest in racing is said to have been triggered by the gift of a red tricycle given to him by his uncle when he was 4 years old. 4 years later, Julia Ann found herself a new husband and moved to Indianapolis, taking 8-year-old Steve with her. The young McQueen's new life was a marked contrast to his old one. Uncle Claude had been good to him, but his stepfather would regularly beat him. At the young age of only 9, he left home to live on the streets and started to turn towards a life of crime. Thankfully, his mother stepped in and sent him back to her brother's farm in Slater. Julia Ann's second marriage ended in divorce, but she married for the third time and moved to Los Angeles and sent for Steve to join her when he was 12. His new home was much like the last one he'd had with his mother, and he and his mother received regular beatings. Steve rebelled again, and once again was sent back to the farm. He didn't stay too long this time though, and left when he was 14 to join the circus. This too wouldn't last that long, and he ended up back with his mother in Los Angeles and started again to drift towards crime. After being caught stealing hubcaps and getting into a fight with his stepfather, he was remanded to the California Junior Boys Republic in Chino. In this institution, Steve McQueen would start to mature, as the boys would find a way to set their own rules, and if they weren't followed, then punishment would follow. But this made Steve respect the rules to a certain extent, and although he wasn't popular at first, he ended up being elected to the Boys' Council, where he helped to set the rules. He left the Boys' Republic at the age of 16, but had a lifelong association with the place, regularly visiting and talking to the boys, even during the height of his fame. It also turned out that the bulk goods, such as razors and pairs of jeans that he would demand as riders for many of the films he starred in, ended up at the Boys' Republic. Still 16 years old, McQueen once again returned to his mother, who was at this point in time living in New York. He then met a couple of sailors and volunteered to serve on a ship heading for the Dominican Republic, but disappeared once he got there and ended up working in a brothel before heading for Texas and a number of different dead-end jobs. In 1947, at the age of 17, McQueen joined the Marines, and during an initial period of resistance to authority was demoted to private 7 times. Eventually though, after spending 41 days in the brig for resisting arrest after going AWOL, he decided to embrace military discipline and even managed to get assigned to an honor guard tasked with guarding President Truman's yacht. He was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps in 1950. Steve McQueen's life in acting started at Sanford Meisner's Neighborhood Playhouse in New York in 1952. In order to earn money, he raced motorcycles at the weekend at Long Island City Raceway, where he found he had talent enough to earn around $100 in prize money most weekends. He had a number of minor theatre parts during this time and made his Broadway debut in A Hatful of Rain in 1955. In the same year, at the age of 25, he left New York and headed for Hollywood, seeking employment as an actor. He was spotted in a 2-part TV show called The Defenders and got himself a part in a B-movie called Somebody Up There Likes Me, which also starred Paul Newman. Following this, he landed parts in Never Love a Stranger and The Blob, which would be his first lead role. On the 2nd of November 1956, Steve McQueen married Neela Adams, and the couple had a daughter called Terry Leslie on the 5th of June 1959 and a son called Chad, who was born on the 28th of December 1960. The couple would divorce in 1972. Following the success of his B-movie appearances, McQueen followed them up with a TV western show called Wanted Dead or Alive, which aired on CBS. It would be this series that would lead to Steve McQueen becoming a household name, playing the part of bounty hunter Josh Randall in 95 episodes that aired from 1958 until 1961. At around this time, McQueen considered a career as a professional race car driver, and even entered a British touring car race at Brands Hatch in 1961, where he finished third. In 1970, he would win the 3-litre class of the 12 Hours of Sebring race in a Porsche 90802 with Peter Revson, and only missed out on winning overall by 23 seconds. The Porsche was later used as a camera car in the 1970 24 Hours of Le Mans race in order to get the footage required for the movie Le Mans. McQueen wanted to team up with Jackie Stewart and actually enter the race as a competitor, but the movie's backers wouldn't let him. McQueen even received a patent for a motor racing bucket seat, which he designed in 1971. Following his next film, Never So Few, the part in which was given to him by Frank Sinatra after he had dropped Sammy Davis Jr., Steve McQueen landed his first hit when he played the part of Vin Tanner in The Magnificent Seven, opposite the likes of Yul Brynner, James Coburn and Charles Bronson. The Magnificent Seven wasn't without its tensions though, particularly between McQueen and Yul Brynner, who was the lead actor in the movie, as McQueen was in the habit of adding small touches that would, in Brynner's eyes, draw the attention of the viewer away from him and onto McQueen. Brynner also refused to draw his gun in any scene with McQueen, as McQueen had learned the art of the fast draw during his time on Wanted Dead or Alive and was clearly faster. The next film was also a hit and catapulted Steve McQueen to superstar status when he played the lead in 1963's The Great Escape. Even though many believe that McQueen performed the movie's iconic motorcycle leap over a barbed wire fence, McQueen himself, whenever he was asked about it, was always quick to point out that it wasn't him, but his friend Bud Ekins, a fellow motorcycle enthusiast and somewhat of a McQueen double, at least from a distance. McQueen did do a lot of the other riding in the movie though, and not always as the lead character, as skilled motorcycle riders were hard to come by. So much so that due to the magic of editing, he can be seen in a German uniform, chasing himself. Over the next couple of years, McQueen starred in Love with the Proper Stranger, opposite Natalie Wood, Nevada Smith, opposite Carl Malden, and The Cincinnati Kid, opposite Anne Margaret. McQueen's only Oscar nomination came in 1966 when he played an engine room sailor in The Sand Pebbles, which also starred Richard Attenborough and Candice Bergen. In 1968 came the movie which is probably the one which most people remember him for, Bullitt, which also starred Robert Vaughn, who had also been one of the Magnificent Seven, and Jacqueline Bisset. The iconic car chase through the streets of San Francisco did feature some driving by McQueen himself, particularly for close-ups, but this would amount to only 10% or so of the chase. The rest of the sequence was driven by Bud Ekins and fellow stunt driver Lauren Janes. Although this is the movie that everyone remembers Steve McQueen for, it is also the one that lost him his 7-picture deal with Warner Brothers, due to Bullitt being so far over budget. It was Warner Brothers' loss though, because when they tried to get McQueen back after Bullitt proved to be a box office smash, he signed on with United Artists instead. This new collaboration resulted in a complete change of character for McQueen when he played a wealthy executive type in the Thomas Crown Affair, opposite Faye Dunaway. The 1970s didn't start off too well, as the motor racing drama Le Mans was poorly received. However, when he signed on for the lead in Sam Peckinpah's The Getaway, he became the world's highest paid actor, and he also met Ali McGraw, whom he married on the 31st of August 1973. In 1973 he starred in another movie that lots of people remember him for when he played the prisoner on Devil's Island in Papillon, which also starred Dustin Hoffman. His next movie was 1974's The Towering Inferno, which was also a box office smash and saw him star alongside one of his main rivals in Hollywood at the time, Paul Newman. Following The Towering Inferno, Steve McQueen pretty much dropped out of the public eye, preferring for the next few years to race motorcycles and travel around the country in his motorhome. He and Ally McGraw were divorced in 1978. His final two movies would be 1980's Tom Horn and The Hunter, which was released also in 1980. On the 16th of January 1980, McQueen married for the third time, this time to model Barbara Minty. In 1978, Steve McQueen had developed a persistent cough, which turned out to be a symptom of pleural mesothelioma, a type of cancer caused by exposure to asbestos. McQueen said that asbestos was used in a number of things that he was exposed to during his career, such as racing suit, fire protection and insulation on sound stages, but also said that the probable cause of his cancer was from when he was exposed to massive amounts of asbestos whilst removing lagging from pipes on a troop ship during his time in the Marines. In the summer of 1980, McQueen travelled to Mexico and paid upwards of $40,000 per month to William Donell Kelly for unconventional and controversial treatment for cancer, such as coffee enemas, massage therapy, and injections of live cattle and sheep cells after American doctors had told him there was nothing more they could do for him. In October the same year, Steve McQueen returned to the USA, and even though Kelly had predicted a complete recovery, he developed massive tumours in his abdomen. Later the same month, he flew back to Mexico for the surgery to remove tumours from his neck, liver and abdomen, as US doctors had said that his heart would not stand the procedure. The doctors were proved correct, as at 3:45 in the morning of the 7th of November 1980, Steve McQueen died from cardiac arrest, 12 hours after surgery. He was 50 years old. Following his cremation, his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. I hope you enjoyed that episode of 5-Minute Biographies. You can also read these biographies for yourself on the website at www.5minutebiographies.com, where you will find quite a few biographies for your reading pleasure that have not yet been turned into podcasts. Also on the website, you'll find links to our social media accounts, so please follow us. If you enjoy the show, and if you are able, you can also help alleviate some of the cost of putting it together by hitting the donate button on the site. And please don't forget to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, as this would really help the show to grow. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the 5-Minute Biographies podcast at www.5minutebiographies.com.